All right, guys, today I'm going to be working on a couple different cars here. This is the first one we've cut out to my son's design. And the first step is to hollow this car out as much as we can. So I'm just going to mark out real quickly the areas that I want to hollow out. I've got my router set to about 1/4 inch deep. And I'll just go back and forth here until I get the whole first layer removed from the bottom of the car. I'll set my router another 1/4 inch deeper here and start my next pass. And I'll continue with this until I'm about 1/4 inch from the top of the car. You can go until this thing's about paper thin all the way around, but I know that these boys are going to be rough with these cars. Even before they hit the track, they're going to be rolling them all over the house and stuff. So this car does need to keep some strength because it's not just going to sit on a shelf until it goes to race. Now that I got the car all hollowed out, it's on to polishing the axles. So on these axles, which are basically just nails, where the shaft meets the head of the nail, it's very rough and you can't really smooth it out with sandpaper. So I use a cutoff grinding wheel and I just put it on there and run the drill. And this will clean off a lot of the imperfections, the big imperfections, fairly quickly and save you some time. Now that I got the big imperfections removed, I'm going to start with some sandpaper, 150 grit, just what I had laying around. I'll cut it into some strips and fold it in half and begin polishing. I'll move on to the 220 grit. Now the 800. After the 800 grit, you could keep going up to 2000 or whatever, crazy numbers. You could polish this axle so it looks like a mirror. I'll get pretty close to that. I don't think it's necessary for these races, but if you're doing a big race where you're competing against, other troops or packs or whatever it is, you're going to need to put the effort into these axles so they're a mirror-like finish. And what I'm going to show you here is an old block of jeweler's rouge I had laying around, and I used it when I polished my motorcycle frame, which was aluminum, and I polished it to the point where it was, like a mirror finish. And if you're just doing a local race with just your 50 guys in your pack or whatever, this might be good enough. But if you're going to get into bigger races, you're going to have to polish these axles so perfect because it's all about the effort you put into it. If you don't put the effort in, somebody else will. And if you want to be first place, you got to do it. Got these axles polished up pretty good, so I'm going to move on to the wheels. So there's a couple different things to talk about here. One is the weight of the wheels. They sell wheels online that are, I don't even know how much lighter it could be because these things are already as light as it gets. And the imperfections on the wheels, these are just plastic, and there's all kinds of little imperfections that can rub up on the car. So we want to lighten up these wheels as much as we can by taking off any of the lettering or whatever's on the outside of the wheel, and then we want to remove any of the imperfections in the plastic. So I'm using a palm sander here to remove the lettering from the outside of the wheel. This I feel like works pretty good because you can't do anything at high speed with the wheels because they're made of plastic. So this will take the plastic off a little bit slower, and then I'll move on to the drill to smooth everything else out. So we got the outside of the wheels all smoothed out. Now we have to smooth out the inside of that wheel hub. Yep, I'm talking wheel hubs here, folks. You know, you're building a Pinewood Derby car that you want to win with. The inside of that wheel, where the axle goes through, has to be cleaned up too. So I got a tiny cotter pin here, and I got some Mother's chrome polish that I'm going to put on this little rag, and I'm going to spin the drill at a pretty slow speed and clean the inside of the axles. They do sell also online a kit to do this, and this is another step. If you want to be first place, you're going to have to do this. Now we're going to move on to the weight of the car. This is very critical. These cars must weigh the max that your pack allows. I don't know if it's different in other areas. I think ours is 5 ounces. It better be, because that's what I'm setting this car to. So I'm going to put all the standard parts on the scale here and see where we're at. And then I'm going to add in other weights and bring us up close to that 5 ounce mark. And again, they sell tungsten or lead online or different things. I'm using some old rusty sockets and some fishing weights to put in here. And the placement of this weight is key. The weight has to be in the furthest rear point of the car, because when that car goes down the track, that weight in the back at the bottom, when it starts to go, when the track goes from the steep point to the flat part, that weight in the back of the car is what's going to propel this thing faster at that point. And if you don't put the weight in the back of the car like this, you basically have no chance. If you don't do these steps, you're just going to lose. Sorry to break it to you. I just got some regular adhesive caulk that I'm going to use to secure these weights into the back of the car here. And so I'll place all the weights in here, get real close to that 5 ounces, and I'll reweigh it a couple times. I'm actually going to probably end up with this thing being about 4.9 ounces. And every scale is a little bit different. And, you know, the one at the weigh-in may be a little more sensitive. So I'm just going to go to 4.9 ounces here. And then I should be good at the weigh-in. I don't want to have to do any modifications right before the race. I'll just do a final check here before I secure the weights to make sure I'm right on the money. And it's spot on, so I'll go ahead and secure the final weights. The final step is to secure the wheels to the car, and I think this is the most critical step of this process, because these wheels cannot have too much play in them. I think it needs to have about a 1/16 inch of play. And this is something you could probably measure with a feeler gauge. I don't know what the thousandths of an inch would be, but you cannot have an 1/8 inch of play in these wheels where they're moving back and forth on the axle. Your car will go back and forth on the track, bouncing around, and you'll just end up being too slow, and somebody will beat you. That's just the way. See, that's too much play right there. That's about an 1/8 inch. Yeah, that's too much. We can't have that. So we'll have to tighten up these nails, and this will take some time to get this correct. Here's a wheel that hasn't been polished, and you can see the imperfections on that inside edge that I was talking about earlier. If you don't clean that up, that's another loser right there. That's going to rub against the edge of the car, and you're screwed. All right, got all the wheels on. Here's a view of what I'm talking about with going with 3 wheels. Will be touching the track. You can see this front one is just up off the ground a little bit there. And so that takes that wheel out of play, but the car will still go straight because of the rails that'll be underneath it. And I'm also going to secure in these axles with some of that adhesive, just because I know these kids are going to be banging these things around and these axles could just kind of come out of here or come out of adjustment. So I'll put a bunch of this on there. Hopefully that keeps them in place. I'm going to use some of this graphite to lube up the axles and wheels. You know, some people may put oil on their axles. This seems like it works the best. And you could just squeeze some in between the wheel and the car here, and then spin the wheel. It'll go down in there. And really, you should put this all over the wheels. All over the wheels, inside and out. It's not going to hurt anything. So just squeeze that stuff in everywhere, and these wheels will spin super fast. And really, this whole race is about friction. You know, I know some people will do the wedge car. We've done that before. That was a fast car, but I've also seen a school bus shaped car, which is basically just a block of wood, win the race. So I wouldn't worry about aerodynamics or anything like that. Your most important thing is to eliminate any friction that you have, and that'll ensure a fast car down the track. Go through and do a test spin on your wheels. If your wheel doesn't spin continuously like this by itself, you got a problem. These wheels need to spin freely with no resistance. So that's all the tips I got for you today. Good luck with your race, and I'll see you guys next time.